Welcome to the channel. This is Speak Better, where we help you improve.
Imagine spending, years building the perfect academic record.
Oh, yeah.
You've meticulously studied, planned your entire future, sacrificed your weekends.
All those Friday nights inside.
Exactly, only to watch all of that potential completely collapse. And why?
Yeah.
Because you just couldn't stop looking at photos of other people's lives.
Right. It's wild when you frame it like that.
It really sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but that quiet, creeping surrender of our attention is, it's basically the defining struggle of our time.
Unquestionably.
And today we are going to look at that struggle from a very unexpected vantage point. Because if you are listening to this, you are someone who loves to learn, right?
Of course.
You are probably out there hunting for dense research papers or complex historical analyses to understand the world. But today on this deep dive, we are turning the magnifying glass onto something that appears incredibly simple on the surface. We're going to see what it actually reveals about our deepest modern anxieties.
Yeah, and the material we're analyzing today is actually an excerpt from an English language learning channel.
Wait, a language learning channel?
Yeah, it's called Speak English Smartly, and we're looking specifically at their second episode. So on a purely functional level, it's a tool for beginners,
Right.
It provides authentic English, spoken at a natural pace by native speakers. It's totally designed to help people pick up idioms and improve their listening comprehension.
But beneath that functional surface, the conversational scenarios these creators use to, teach vocabulary, they're actually tackling profound, universal, modern dilemmas.
They really are. It's not just where's the library?
Right. They aren't just teaching you how to order a coffee or ask for directions. They're using this tension between modern freedoms and traditional boundaries as the actual vehicle for language acquisition.
Which is brilliant.
It is. We are going to examine how everyday educational dialogue frames our desperate search for structure in a world of infinite choice. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, to start, the source dialogue introduces two characters, Robin and Ronica, who immediately find themselves confessing to a very contemporary vice, which is the digital drain.
Oh, the classic trap.
Yeah, they openly admit to spending just hours scrolling through Instagram and Facebook every single day. But what's interesting is they don't classify this merely as procrastination.
Right. They don't just say, oh, I'm wasting a little time.
Exactly. They explicitly label it an addiction that is severely impacting their professional productivity.
It is the universal modern confession. We've all been there. But the stakes are brought into really sharp relief when they introduce this cautionary tale about a third character, a student named Anna.
Ah, yes. The tragedy of Anna.
Yeah, the tragedy of Anna. So Anna was always a top-tier student, the kind of person who just had her academic life entirely under control.
Always got the A.
Right. Then Robin and Ronica reveal that she just failed a major exam. And the reason wasn't a sudden inability to grasp the material. It was literally because her attention had been completely cannibalized by the daily maintenance of her social media presence.
Right, posting pictures, chatting with online friends, just constant upkeep.
Exactly.
And the underlying mechanism here is cognitive depletion. The dialogue points out that studying requires sustained dedication and time, which are resources Anna simply no longer possessed.
Because she spent them all online.
Right. We often think of time spent online as a pause button on our real lives. But the source presents a very clear cause and effect relationship, where digital distraction actively erodes your real-world capability.
It's so true. I think of this less like a pause button and more like a leaky faucet.
Right.
Or maybe running a background app on your computer that quietly drains your RAM.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Because every time you open Instagram to check a notification, that's a drop from the faucet. Your brain has to load the context of that person's life, process the visual data, trigger an emotional response.
Whether that's envy or amusement or just FOMO.
Exactly. And then you have to dump all of that cognitive cash just to get back to studying. That context switching, it requires immense mental energy.
It's exhausting.
Feels harmless in the moment, like a single drop of water. But you leave those background apps running, that faucet dripping, and by the time Anna actually needs to sit down and synthesize complex academic material, her reservoir of focus is just gone. Her cognitive battery is completely dead.
And that processing cost is precisely what Robin and Ronica are forced to confront. They reach this pivotal realization in the text, literally asking themselves, what do we really get out of posting our photos and giving likes?
The million-dollar question.
Right. They recognize the total asymmetry of the transaction. Yeah. They're trading high-value cognitive energy for incredibly low-value returns.
Yeah, a few likes on a screen.
Exactly. The source is essentially isolating the difference between passive consumption,
Yeah.
where you're just a vessel for algorithmic feeds, and active engagement that actually yields real value.
The return on investment is just abysmal. So they move from identifying this cognitive drain to basically attempting a system override, right? The dialogue shifts to designing a digital diet.
Yeah, they need a plan.
Robin and Ronica realize they have to introduce artificial friction into their digital lives just to protect themselves from their own habits.
So they start brainstorming this hierarchy of boundaries. The baseline strategy they suggest is setting strict daily time limits.
Okay, pretty standard.
Right. Allocating a specific window for social media and then physically removing the device from their environment. But from there, they escalate to taking complete social media breaks for a week or two to force like a neurological reset.
A full detox.
Yeah, and they also discuss the concept of curation. This shifts the focus from simply reducing screen time to intentionally altering the quality of that time, by following educational or inspiring accounts instead of just mindlessly scrolling.
Okay, I like that part.
And finally, they propose a social media detox challenge with friends and family to leverage peer pressure as a positive structural support.
Okay, I actually have to jump in and push back on the methodology Robin and Ronica are proposing here. Specifically, that 1 to 2 week detox break.
Really? Why is that?
That sounds incredibly similar to a crash diet, If you completely starve your dopamine receptors of external validation for 2 weeks without fundamentally interrogating why you are seeking that distraction in the first place.
You're basically just white-knuckling it.
Exactly. You're just white-knuckling your way through the week. The underlying appetite hasn't changed at all. Aren't you virtually guaranteed to relapse the moment the detox challenge ends?
That's a fair point.
It feels like treating the symptom while totally ignoring the disease.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source actually anticipates the failure of willpower alone.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. A simple absence of technology just creates a vacuum.
Right.
And vacuums demand to be filled. That is why the characters don't just advocate for a temporary break. They explicitly call for a social media revolution rooted in intentionality.
Okay, so the goal isn't just throwing your phone into a lake.
Far from it. The goal is forging a structured, positive relationship with the tool. When they talk about curating their feeds to follow inspiring accounts, they're demonstrating that you have to replace passive dopamine hits with active, valuable cognitive engagement.
Right.
They're trying to build an internal framework that allows them to utilize the technology without being completely consumed by it.
Which means we're essentially admitting that our individual willpower just isn't strong enough to handle the infinite freedom of the digital world.
Yeah, it's just too much.
We literally have to artificially construct rigid boundaries just to survive it. And this human instinct to seek out external structures when freedom becomes overwhelming, it actually maps perfectly onto how this educational dialogue makes its next move. It executes a massive thematic pivot.
It really does. The transition of the text is just striking. They move from discussing how to manage the chaotic freedom of our iPhones directly into how we manage the chaotic freedom of our romantic futures.
Quite the leap.
I know. The characters plunge into this heavyweight debate. Love marriage versus arranged marriage.
The paradox of choice in our digital lives leads directly into the paradox of choice in our personal lives. It's fascinating. I imagine Robin, who was so eager to curate her own social media experience, champions the love marriage approach, right? Prioritizing individual agency.
She absolutely does. Robin's argument is deeply individualistic. She prioritizes the freedom to choose, the necessity of knowing a partner intimately before committing, and this core belief that a marriage must be built on a pre-existing foundation of true love.
Right, the classic modern romance.
Exactly. For her, the success of the partnership relies entirely on the emotional bond established by the two people involved.
Yeah.
Ronica, however, takes the complete opposite view. She advocates for the traditional arranged marriage.
And I suspect Ronica's argument hinges on outsourcing that overwhelming choice to a trusted system, much like setting an app timer to manage your screen time.
That's a great way to put it. She argues for the prioritization of traditional structure. In Ronica's view, family involvement is a necessary mechanism to ensure objective compatibility.
Because they're on the outside looking in.
Right. The families act as this external vetting system, analyzing background, values, and life goals to make a pragmatic match. The fundamental difference lies in the timeline of affection.
How so?
Well, Ronica argues that you don't start with the blazing fire of love. You start with a stable foundation and intentionally build love and understanding over time. which she claims mitigates the risk of a fiery romance inevitably burning out.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Think about this fundamental difference, like acquiring a home.
Okay, I'm listening.
Robin's approach, the love marriage, is like building a custom house entirely from scratch. You have total freedom. You pick the plot of land, the architectural style, the exact color of the kitchen tiles, everything.
Looks great on paper.
Right. But the structural integrity of that house rests entirely on your shoulders. If you didn't test the soil or if you used cheap materials because they looked aesthetically pleasing in the moment, that house might completely collapse when the first major storm hit.
Because you didn't know what you were doing.
Exactly. You are the architect, the builder, and the sole inspector.
Whereas Veronica's approach, the arranged marriage, is the equivalent of moving into a pre-inspected, family-vetted home.
Yes.
You certainly didn't get to choose the floor plan. And, the exterior paint might not be your personal preference. But a team of people whose sole interest is your long-term safety has checked the foundation, inspected the roof, and guaranteed the structural integrity.
The hard part is already done.
Right. Your objective is simply to move into that sturdy structure and slowly decorate it over time, making it your own.
It is the ultimate tension between high risk, high reward freedom and the guaranteed safety of established boundaries.
And that tension highlights a very specific vulnerability, Veronica points out in the text. She argues that love can be blind.
Oh, definitely.
When you're deeply infatuated, operating in this state of romantic euphoria while building that custom house, you are neurochemically primed to overlook serious red flags.
You ignore the cracks in the foundation.
Exactly. You might ignore fundamental incompatibilities regarding finances or family planning because the immediate emotion is just so overpowering. Veronica posits that objective family members who are entirely free from that romantic blindness are much better equipped to spot those structural flaws before any permanent contracts are signed.
Which brings us to the darker side of this dialogue. Because the text is actively connecting this romance debate back to the cautionary tale of Anna from the first segment.
Yes, the parallels are striking.
Both halves of this beginner's English lesson feature a remarkably similar narrative arc, right? A highly successful individual whose potential is utterly derailed by unchecked modern freedoms. In the first half, it was the seductive freedom of infinite digital connection. In the second half, it's the volatile freedom of modern romance.
Yeah, and to drive this parallel home, Veronica shares a rather intense anecdote about a college friend.
Right, this part was heavy.
Very. So, similar to Anna, this friend was an exceptional student with a bright future. However, she entered into a romantic relationship that eventually ended in a terrible breakup. The text describes the friend as becoming mad, abandoning her studies entirely, and even contemplating doing something terrible.
It is a devastating escalation of stakes, from failing a test to a complete life breakdown.
It really is. And Veronica uses this tragic outcome to argue a highly pragmatic point about emotional volatility. If a romance falls apart, the emotional fallout can literally destroy your life and negate years of hard work.
It's terrifying.
Right. Therefore, the family safety net provided by an arranged marriage isn't just about cultural tradition. It is a protective mechanism designed to insulate an individual's long-term stability from the chaotic, unpredictable swings of unguided romance.
I mean, I understand the primal desire for that safety net, especially when you're confronted with a story of such profound derailment. But I have to challenge Veronica's safety-first philosophy here, using Robin's own counter-argument from the text.
Go for it.
Robin asks a very simple, terrifying question about this pre-inspected house. She says, what if the families choose someone you simply don't like?
Poof. Yeah, it exposes the central flaw of prioritizing structure over agency.
I want you to really consider that trade-off. Is avoiding the acute, agonizing heartbreak of a terrible breakup really worth the risk of being permanently tethered to someone with whom you possess zero initial chemistry?
That's a tough pill to swallow.
Right. Is a structurally flawless, storm-proof house worth occupying if you absolutely dread walking through the front door every single day? I mean, heartbreak is a brutal, agonizing experience, but it's also a fundamental catalyst for human growth.
True.
Trying to permanently insulate yourself from that pain by outsourcing the choice to a committee, it seems like you are trading the risk of acute heartbreak for the absolute guarantee of a low-grade, lifelong